Have you ever noticed that there are days when you wake up feeling calm, relaxed, and full of energy, while on other days you begin with fatigue, stress, and a lack of motivation? What's interesting is that the cause isn't always what happens during that day. It often starts the night before. Researchers have found that the final hours before sleep have a powerful influence on our mood, stress levels, and even our sense of happiness the next day. But most people rarely pay attention to this. We spend a lot of time trying to improve our mornings, optimizing our work, searching for motivation, building new habits, while unintentionally doing things that make it harder for the brain to rest at night. What's surprising is that happy people don't necessarily have a perfect evening routine, but they often avoid certain mistakes that many people repeat every day. Small mistakes, very common, but enough to quietly affect sleep, mood, and quality of life. And there's a chance you're doing one of them tonight. Most people think happiness is determined by what we do during the day. But neuroscience shows that an important part of mental well-being is built while the brain is resting. When you sleep, the brain doesn't simply shut down, it processes memories, regulates emotions, organizes information, restores energy for the next day. So what you bring into sleep often affects how you wake up. That's why the first thing happy people rarely do before bed is bring work into bed with them. Many people finish their workday, but their brains keep working. They check email one last time, review their to-do list, think about tomorrow's meeting, worry about what hasn't been finished. The problem is that the brain cannot truly rest if it still believes the workday isn't over. Researchers have found that work-related stress before sleep is associated with lower sleep quality and higher levels of exhaustion the following day. Happy people usually create a clear boundary between work and rest, not because they have fewer responsibilities, but because they understand that the brain also needs a signal that today is finished. The second thing they don't do is mindlessly scroll on their phones until they fall asleep. This is probably one of the most common habits today. We tell ourselves we'll only look for a few minutes, but then an hour passes, 2 hours pass. During that time, the brain is constantly receiving new stimulation, new videos, new news, new notifications, new information. The dopamine system is continuously activated. This leaves the body tired while the mind remains awake. Many studies show that exposure to screens and stimulating content right before bed can reduce sleep quality and make it harder for the brain to transition into a resting state. Happy people don't necessarily give up technology. They simply don't let technology control the final hour of their day. The third thing they don't do is repeatedly replay their mistakes. You may have experienced this yourself. Everything seems fine until you lie down. Suddenly, the brain starts replaying an awkward conversation, a mistake at work, something you wish you had done differently. Psychologists call this rumination, the repeated cycle of negative thinking. The problem is that it usually doesn't solve anything. It only makes negative emotions last longer. Happy people aren't people who never make mistakes. They simply spend less time punishing themselves for them. They learn from what happened, then allow themselves to move forward. The fourth thing they don't do is end the day with comparison. Think about it. When are you most likely to compare yourself to others? For many people, it's when they're lying in bed with a phone in their hand. You see someone traveling, someone succeeding, someone who appears happier, and suddenly your own life seems less interesting. The problem is that the brain doesn't realize it's looking at carefully selected moments. It only sees evidence that it isn't good enough. Over time, this can reduce life satisfaction even when nothing has actually changed. Happy people understand that comparison rarely makes life better, so they spend less energy on it. And finally, the most important thing, happy people don't go to sleep focusing only on what's wrong. The brain naturally remembers problems, what hasn't been finished, what needs to be fixed, what might happen in the future. That's a natural survival mechanism. But if we let the brain operate on its default settings, it's very easy to end the day feeling as if life is nothing but pressure. One of the simplest habits of happy people is spending a few minutes acknowledging the good things that happened. Nothing major is required. A pleasant conversation, a good meal, a peaceful moment, a small task completed. This doesn't make problems disappear, but it helps the brain see the whole picture instead of focusing only on what's missing. And over time, that creates a huge difference. Today, we've explored 5 things that happy people rarely do before bed. They don't bring work into bed. They don't mindlessly scroll on their phones for hours. They don't constantly punish themselves for mistakes. They don't end the day with comparison. And they don't forget to acknowledge the good things that happened. None of these things are powerful enough to change your life overnight. But lasting happiness is rarely built overnight. It is built through small choices repeated every day. Imagine yourself 1 month from now. You still have responsibilities, you still have challenges. But each night, your brain is allowed to slow down, allowed to rest, allowed to end the day in a slightly more peaceful state. And sometimes happiness doesn't come from adding more things to your life. It comes from stopping the things that are quietly taking it away. If there's one thing you'd like to change starting tonight, share it in the comments. And if you found this video helpful, save it so you can come back whenever you need a gentle reminder before bed. Thank you for spending your time here, and I'll see you in the next video.